Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Inglis, and I am the State Aid Coordinator for the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. I'm going to walk you through the financial report and state aid application today. I'm going to break this up into several videos because I have recorded it with groups this year, and unfortunately the file got corrupted. So I'm hoping if I can do it in pieces, that will resolve the issue. So the login information for the Baker and Taylor Collect system, which is what we use to do the reporting, can be found on the State Aid and ERIS website. And if you go to the ERIS and Financial Report section, you can log into Collect here. This should look familiar to everyone because you would have done your ERIS or the Annual Report Information Survey in this system in the early summer or July, I guess. And we use the same thing for the financial report. You'll put in your login and your password. And I am logging in as a library right now. And I'm just going to orient you to the screen and give you a few tips and tricks about using the system. So up here in the top in white is Baker and Taylor information. It's not MBLC information. And we have had several people contact Baker and Taylor for things like passwords and reporting problems. And you should really start with us and see if we can resolve the issue. And then if you do contact Baker and Taylor, let us know that you've done so that we can be aware of that. In the blue is related to your work for MBLC. And up in the top here, you will see the name of the library. So you want to make sure you're actually using your library's information. We have a page here that says survey list, and that's what this page is. And we have a section here called current surveys. And right now, the only survey that's open is the 2024 Massachusetts Financial Report. So that is the fiscal year you are applying for state aid. So you are applying for state aid in FY24. Down here, it says continue. That it will say continue even if you've just started. So you'll continue to open it up. Status, you can see where you are in the system, and I'll point that out later. And then you can print out a copy here if you want. And this is current surveys. In August, before the ERIS closed and after the financial report opened, there was a period of time where you would have seen 2 blocks here. And so if you're working on it then, make sure that you are in the right report. And then once the ERIS closed, you'll see that the 2024 ERIS moved down to the other surveys section. And if you look at this, you can see your 2023 report, financial report, and your 2023 ERIS, 2022 financial, 2022 ERIS, and you goes back to 2019. So all of your reports are available to be printed for you. So if you hit this print icon, it will send you, I think you have to enter your email, and it will send you the information that's on your survey. FAQs is just about how to fill out the fields in the survey. It's not about the content of the survey. Going to hit continue and go into the financial report. And you'll see here's your survey, the library name. Here's the survey list link. So that will bring you back to the page we were just on, FAQs, and then instructions. So I'm going to click on instructions here. And instructions up at the top, it's click here to view a printable version of the instructions. So you can print these out if you'd like. And you can also print out a version of the survey if you need to fill it out by hand or give sections to other people on staff to fill out for you. It doesn't look exactly like the survey in Collect, but it is a tool that you can use to help you get the information. Now, the financial report instructions, there are tips here. So if you read through this, it gives some general information. These also show up in the survey themselves, and I will go over them in this training. Then we get into definitions. So for each question on the survey, you can get the information about what the definition is. So what exactly is municipal income? And then there's a whole bunch of stuff here that talks about that. So I'm going to return to my survey. And you'll see up here, that was the instructions here. And I'll show you where you can actually find that in the survey as you're going. Then you have your 2024 report title, so you make sure you're in the right space. Show status here is a step that we ask you to take before you submit. I also recommend you do it several times as you're going, and we'll do that later on. This is print. You can pull up, you can print your entire survey, you can print just a section of your survey. You can include annotations, which are the notes that you leave to yourself or to MBLC. You can do current year's data, you can do without any data, you can do with current and last year's data, depending on whether or not it's confusing to you to have that information. Return to my survey. Submit is also lock. So when you're done, you will hit submit and it will lock your report. If you've done it before you're actually ready to do it, we can reopen it for you, but just be aware that it takes a little while. We're not always right there when you need it unlocked. Previous goes to a previous page, and save is just saving as you're going. The system does save when you go from page to page, but if you've spent a lot of time saving and doing data entry, it's worth it to just hit save as you're going. On the left-hand side is the navigation bar. So you've got survey navigation. So there's general information, there's an income section, an expenditures section, additional information, and then the application and the submission process. So when I went into this report for Abington, they're already at the end. So it's popping up where they left off. I'm going to have us go back up to general information, and I'll walk through general information and the income section, and then I'll pause and do the next section afterwards. Up on the top, or in the white, on the top of each section or in between different questions, there's information for you. So make sure you read that. If it can tell you where you are, so we know we're in general information, but there might also be other instructions there. There's a toggle here to show last year's answers. So there's last year's, and then you can hide them. And these questions that have grayed out boxes are pre-filled for you. If you need to change that, please contact me or Wei Chi at MBLC, and we can see about changing that information. So it's your library name, street address, your mailing address, telephone number is the first field you need to fill in. Director's phone number, it's fine if it's the same. Your network, there are a handful of libraries who changed networks from last year or joined network this year. So if this isn't correct, please let us know and we can change it. The next section is the person who's completing the survey. This might be the director, it might not be the director. It's important for us to know who the person is so that as we're reviewing them later, we can reach out to someone if we have a problem and we need clarification. Email address of the person completing the survey, then the director's information, director's email address. We need the trustee chair first name, last name, and email address. And then your population is pre-filled for you. That's determined by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. So we can't make any adjustments to that. It's populated, pre-populated. Next brings us to the next page. So you'll see up here, we are at income part 1. And then if you look at the navigation bar on the left, you'll see that the part 1 is highlighted here for you. So you can kind of be oriented in 2 different locations. Section A is FY23 total appropriated municipal income. This is your TAMI. And it's FY23, so it was July 22 to June 30th, 2023 is the information we're looking for here. A1 is the municipal income. What were you appropriated? Sorry, this is operating income from your municipality. What money were you appropriated at town meeting or at the financial committee meeting for cities? What was your municipal income? Next to this box is a question mark. And if you hit on this, you'll notice this box pops up. And this box is giving you the same information that appears here in the instruction sheet. So if you're looking for a definition or clarification, you should click on this button here and it can help you. But if you just want to print out the whole thing and do that, have that handy, you can do that too. So that your operating income from your municipality, your municipal income goes here. And if you are a library who receives dog tax income, that will go here. And then these, it looks maroon on this computer. These answers are totaled for you and they're grayed out, which means you can't save them. And that's because it's calculating it from up above. So you'll see your total appropriated municipal income, otherwise known as your TAMI, is A1 here and then A2 here. Then the next section is capital income from your municipality. So this would be if your library was granted money for a capital project from your municipality. So it was appropriated to the library. And there's a definition here, so you can go ahead and put that in. And one thing that we always say about the financial form is that it's not a balance sheet. So when you do your income and you do your expenditures, they don't have to equal. So in this example here, Abington got $900,000 in capital income for the prior year, but they probably won't spend it all in 1 year. That's a pretty big chunk of money. So we don't expect to see $900,000 show up in the expenses side. And it could be that it shows up 3 years from now, and that's totally okay. We want the income in the year it was received, and we want the expenditure in the year it was expended or spent. Section B is retroactive salaries income from the municipal appropriation. So this would be for the prior year. So if in FY23 you got retro salaries because of a contract negotiation, because of a new employee, that for FY22, that goes in this box. If you got FY23 retroactive salaries, so you're filling this out in September and the fiscal year started in July, if you got FY23 salaries money after July 1st, you would just put that in salaries and up in municipal income here. Then FY23 total non-reoccurring appropriated income. So this is income appropriated for one-time expense. This could be if you received a chunk of money because a dispensary opened up in your town and you're getting some of those tax dollars. This could be if your community is having a 400th anniversary celebration and the town has given different departments a chunk of money to spend on that celebration. It's appropriated for one time and it's one use. The reason we separate this out is so that it doesn't go into your appropriation requirement. We recognize that sometimes there are things that happen that are just one time only. And then your other municipal income is the FY23 total municipally appropriated revolving fund. So this is if you go through a process at town meeting or with city council where you are granted permission to spend money up to a certain amount. So say you are allowed to spend $6,000 of the fines and fees you take in. but it's officially voted on every year, then that's what we're looking for here. And we're not looking for that amount of $6,000. We're not looking for the highest amount that you're allowed to get. We're actually looking for what you took in. So if your revolving fund says that you can have $6,000, but you only took in 4,200, we want 4,200 here in this amount. Not everyone has a revolving fund that is municipally appropriated. If you wonder, you could ask somebody in your financial office. If you have never heard of it, you probably don't have one. So, but it is a process that goes through. It's on your town meeting warrant. It's voted on by city council, those kinds of things. I'm going to hit save here, imagining that we had information, had entered information. And then I'm going to go to the next page. So the next is income part 2. And I'm going to show last year's answers here because I think it's useful sometimes to see what you've previously entered, and that can flag for you an error sometimes. So section E is FY23 total non-appropriated income. So this is money you have to spend that doesn't come from the municipality. And so it's divided into 2 sections. We have operations and capital. So the first section is non-municipal income for operations. So money you use to run your library. E1 is trust and endowment income. So this is not the amount of money you have in a trust or an endowment. It's what you're allowed to spend. So for some people, you're only allowed to spend the interest that's earned in a year. And so if that's the case, we want the interest. And this number here, that's probably what that was in FY22 for Abington. But you might have somebody who says you can use $10,000 plus the interest. And so that would be the income that's available to you. And I'm going to just flag this question so we can come back to it later, because as I'm doing this form, or as you're doing this form, you may need to go and ask someone else for information. So I just recommend flagging things and going back to them later. Monetary gifts are things like donations, or if the Girl Scouts fundraise for you or something like that. And if you hit this question, the instructions say, money given to the library as a gift by private organizations or individuals and used for operating expenses, include memorial gifts, exclude in-kind gifts. So if you have a patron or a trustee who's passed away and they've asked that money gets sent to the library in their memory, that you would put here. If someone donates money because the reference librarian was super helpful when they were working on a book, you could put that here. You exclude in-kind donations. So a library had an example where they had a concert series and the performers were donating their time to the library instead of having to be paid. And so that's lovely, but it doesn't count as a donation because we're looking at income. So it's not a monetary donation. State aid to public libraries, that's the money you get from the state through MBLC for being in this program. That's why you're filling out this form. We need for you to include the total amount that you got from MBLC last year. This category is in 2 locations, and I'll show you where those are, and I will show you how to find that information in a second. State grants. It says arts lottery, but we need to change that to say cultural council grant. If there are state-specific grants that are not coming from the MBLC, you could put here. So it's grant income funded by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts used for operating expenses. Do not include state aid to public libraries or state construction awards. Those categories are elsewhere. And it's possible you don't have anything, and that's fine. Federal LSTA grants. So those are the library services and technology grant money. You might have received a grant from MBLC or through MBLC for the LSTA grant. You might have applied directly to IMLS grant. So that's the federal grant money. If you've got a 2-year grant and you get money each year, we only want the income on the year you got it. So if you got a $10,000 grant this year and $10,000 next year, wait until next year to do that $10,000. Other federal grants, so this could be if you have ARPA funding for operations, if you applied to other national or governmental organizations. So if it's a federal grant, but it's not Library Science and Technology Act grant, you would put that here. And then I recommend whenever you're doing something that's kind of a one-off, like a grant, or if you have a new trust set up that you've got money in, then it's a big difference, but the number's different. You want to leave yourself a note. And so that I hit here, and you've got federal notes, you have state notes, and then you have local notes and previous year notes. Local notes are notes that you leave to yourself. I can see them, but they're your notes to yourself. If you're planning on leaving, you're going to retire or change jobs, it's really useful if you put good notes here, because in the system, the prior year notes pull up and you can copy and paste this from year to year. So just be aware that it only goes back 2 years, but if you copy and paste it into local and then hit save, that will save that for you. And if you remember back in the beginning, we can actually get your older notes, or you can get your older notes on the prior year reports, so they don't disappear. But it's really good for you to do this. And so for other federal grants, you might leave a note to yourself that says, we applied for this grant from the Humanities, whatever council, and received $10,000 for this year. And that way, next year, you'll be like, what was that $10,000? And then you'll have that memory. There also, you may get an edit check. So when you enter information and save, there might pull up a note that shows up here, and it will be in red, and it will say there's a problem with your figure for whatever reason, and it will give you a little definition, and then it will say, please provide an explanation in either the federal or state field. And so this is where you would put that. Most of these are going to be federal. There are some state categories, so just look carefully at that note. You can write a note in both. That's totally fine. These are seen by us and they are used by us, and they are, as well as your local documents, FOIA-able. So just be aware of that when you're leaving yourself notes. Make sure you save, as I said. Then other grants. So these are the random other things you might apply for, like Target or Dollar Tree gives out grants. If you've got money from Panera or something like that, you can do that here. And it says grants other than federal and state grants used for operating expenses. Income received from your friends group. So this is an area that we get frequent questions on. So this is literal income. This is literal cash. How much money did your friends give you in cash for you to spend? If they pay for things themselves, you don't include it here. This is only income. So some friends groups pay for everything themselves, so we're not going to see anything on our report for that. Some friends groups will say, here's $5,000 for your summer reading program, spent the way you want. So you would put that $5,000 here. This is a good spot to give yourself a note or a flag or something like that to figure out what that is. Fines and fees, these would be if you don't have that revolving fund I mentioned on the prior page and you still collect fines and fees, how much did you take in for this? There aren't very many libraries who still do overdue book fees, but if you charge fees to use your meeting room or lost books or anything like that, any of those other fees that you have, you could put them here. You don't want to duplicate. So it's possible that you have money in both. If you have a revolving fund and then you have other types of fees, your revolving fund might only be for overdues, and then you have meeting room fees and you would put those here. So don't double report. And then other income is kind of a catch-all. What other money did you get last year for operating expenses? And then this is definitely a good spot to leave yourself a note. I got this random thing. Some people got rebates from electric companies or other utilities, and they used it for operating income. So that would be an example of something you would put there. Then it's totaled up for you. So this is your total non-appropriated income. So it's all of those things that didn't come from your town. And then total operating income for state use. So this would be the amounts you have entered for the year. So for now, this is just in Deb's, Deb is the director in Abington. In her situation, she hasn't finished filling this out yet. So it's only showing her municipal income from the previous page. Now we're into the capital expense income, and this is the same categories. So do you have trust and endowment income for capital expenses? Did somebody set up a trust fund for a genealogy room, something like that? And then you would do, is it just the interest you can spend? Is there an income amount? So it's the same qualifications, but just for capital use only. Monetary gifts, did you do a fundraising campaign for a construction project? And you could put those here if they're from individuals. State aid to public libraries. Are you using some of your state aid money for a capital project? It's totally okay with us if you want to do that. So you're going to make sure that you have all of your state aid reported, but it can be divided between E16 or E3. So either operating or capital. Then state grants, state construction grant. So this would be, if you got a grant from us, that would be the amount you got that year, not your total award. Federal LSTA grants for capital projects, other federal grants for capital projects. A lot of the ARPA money that people were getting were for capital projects. So this would be where you would put that. Other grants, you might have a tech company in your community who wants to set up help you pay for a computer lab. Income received for friends groups. Maybe your friends are doing fundraising for a capital project, and then they give you that cash to spend. You would put that here, and then fines and fees again, and then other income again. And then it will show your total your total capital non-appropriated income, and then your total, so the appropriated and the non-appropriated added together. And then next we get to your FY24, so the current fiscal year projected total appropriated municipal income. So this is the money that you were awarded in town meeting in the spring or through your city for this current fiscal year. So we need to have you put in your municipal income for FY24, your dog tax income for FY24, and then you will need to send us proof of this amount when you send in your forms. And I'll talk about that when I get to submission. But official documentation is a copy of the warrant if you have town meeting, a copy of the city council budget form. It's not your internal work. It is something official from the municipality that shows what you are awarded for this year. That there are some communities where they're doing sort of lump sums. So arts and culture, if your library is considered arts and culture, they'll get a lump sum, and that's what's in your warrant. If that's the case and you can't get something official, we need an email or something from a person high up in the organization. So it could be town manager, town accountant, something like that, that says, here was the appropriation for the library for FY24. Then there are a bunch of totals. And then you would hit save, and then you would go to next. But before we do that, I'm going to show you where you can find your State Aid to Public Libraries award. This is information you should know. You get your awards in 2 installments. You'll get one in either November, December, or January, depending on when you are certified. And then you'll get the second half in April. And the reason for this is that the state doesn't give MBLC all of the money up front, because we need to see what happens with, the economy and all that kind of stuff. So from the MBLC website, going back to the state aid website here, we have a page of awards. And here you get, you can search for past awards and then FY23 awards. So the very top one here shows the total award. So it's the initial and second payment combined, April 2023. And then you'll just take a look at this. Find your municipality. So right now we're working on Abington's. It will show you your population, the day the library was certified. And then your grant is made up of 3 different sort of subgroups. The first is the library incentive grant, and that is a strictly population-based number. So we get a pool of money and it's divided by the population in each community. Then there's the municipal equalization grant. That is based on the wealth of the community. So the wealthier towns get a smaller share of that pot. Then there's the non-resident circulation offset that you get. So in the ERIS, we ask you to tell us how many people from other certified towns came into your library and borrowed materials over the desk. And you get a small offset to help with that piece of the state aid program, because that reciprocal borrowing, the sharing of resources, it's such a key component. And we recognize that when people come into your library who aren't from your community, it is a burden on your staff. So there's an offset here. And it's based on, there's a small amount, and that amount, when we figure out what that amount is, then it's divided up by how many people come in to your library from other communities. Some years it could be a lot, some years it could be others. During COVID, there weren't very many libraries who were open to the public all the time. And so those libraries who were, if they let people from out of town, if they were circulating to everyone, they could see a huge number. But then when everybody reopened, that pool of money got lower. And then your total award. So this is the number we need you to put in your survey. And it would either be in your non-appropriated income, E3. So if you're using the whole thing or part of it for operations, you can put it here. And if you're using part of it for capital, you would put it here. You can accumulate state aid money. You don't need to spend it. And again, it's not a balance sheet. So if you got $32,000 this year, we don't expect to see a breakdown of how you spent that, because you might be saving it. You might have a one-time expense. There are lots of different ways to use state aid money, and it doesn't have to be all in the same year. So I am going to stop this recording and be back with expenditures in a bit.